Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the National FairTax Webinar. As always, I'm joined by my colleague, Larry Walters, and this is Mark Maneri. We're really grateful that you've joined us tonight, and we acknowledge you for taking time out of your busy lives, busy schedules to be with us and get some education. We've got some important issues to handle for this country, and tax reform is one of them. And this webinar is intended to teach you about the most well-funded and financed and comprehensive tax reform plan ever in the history of this country. So I'll say a bit more about that in just a bit. And before we get rolling here tonight, just a couple of housekeeping items. So we've got a number of people on from across the country, so you've come in muted. And we want to direct your attention to your control panel where you can, at the bottom of it, type in a question. So the way that we orient our webinar is we give a 20 to 25 minute overview of the fair tax and its main points. And then we take about a 10 to 15 minute break where we answer all of your questions that you write in. You could also put your hand up and we'll see that and we will unmute you so that you can speak out your question if you prefer that way. And then we will cover our special topic where we isolate one component of the fair tax and we go a little bit deeper in it, and then we finish off the evening with answering the rest of your questions. So just before we get started, just to have a sense of who's on the line with us tonight, we want to launch a poll here and just have an understanding what is your level of fair tax expertise. Are you brand new at this, first time? Do you know the basics? Or are you really experienced? So would love for you to chime in on that. And just a couple more moments here. We'll get everybody who voted. And okay, great. We're going to go ahead and close it out. So we've closed the poll. And I'll share the results. And everybody knows something. And we've got some experienced folks on the line tonight. That's great. Thank you for either coming back or for continuing your education and your input and your support. And for those of you who are just familiar with the basics, we're certainly going to review those and we will ask you to ask some questions. So be active. All right. All right. So as we jump into this, you're looking at a screen here, an image on my screen that demonstrates a problem. We've got a tax code over 75,000 pages now, it being at late 2017. And, you know, the fair tax in the many, many presentations that I've done is something that one way that we describe it, that I describe it, is simple, fair, and transparent. And the fair tax is 131 pages, double spaced. And I love this idea that sometimes simple is better. And, you know, like, look, we've got a tax system that is putting incredible drag on our country and on our economy in a myriad of ways. And it's no surprise. And yet, we still have it. And the timeliness of this is urgent because Trump is talking about tax reform. He's got some other fish he's trying to fry right now, but it's coming. And when major tax overhaul occurs, you know, it's something that gets shelved for many years before it's looked at again. And the risk is if the fair tax doesn't get looked at and passed this go around, it's going to be put on the shelf. So we got some urgency with it, folks. And we want you on board to raise your voice and raise your hand and stay in action if it aligns for you. And so part of our purpose tonight is to give you enough information to have you determine if it aligns for you or not. And if it does, we request that you're in action about it. And more about that later in the presentation. Yeah, and I just want to check in with my colleague Larry, who's recording this, and we put up the recording online. Can you see my screen and can you hear me okay? Is the technology working just fine?
Everything is coming across 5 by.
Thank you, Larry. All right, so we've got some challenges with our tax code. I said it puts drag on our country and our economy. Here's why. It's convoluted. 75,000 pages. There's no two CPAs that could ever get to the exact same identical tax return. That's a problem. That raises a flag around fairness. In other words, it's not fair, and that's one of the reasons. Punishes growth. We inspire the wrong behavior. Lack of transparency. Incredibly inefficient, which we'll get into in our special topic tonight. Obviously impedes privacy, and winners and losers, meaning if you can afford the best and the brightest of financial CPAs and tax attorneys, well, then you can skirt the system a bit. Yeah, that speaks to fairness, not fair, right? And incredibly time intensive. So we'll talk about that in detail. And the fair tax, it really, it sheds all of these elements of drag that are present and prevalent in our current tax system. And man, it just pours rocket fuel on our economy. So we'll show you that. So first thing that what's important to communicate is that we've got this legislation written. Now, I said something up front. I said, this is the most well-funded tax research and reform ever put forth. And so $22 million of independent third party came together and raised some private money and set forth a mandate to create comprehensive tax reform that would create a paradigm shift around our current tax system and would shift away from income tax. And what you have is legislation known as HR 25 and S 18 currently in the House and the Senate that absolutely handles it. Like, it is absolutely brilliant. So, well, we told you it's real simple. So we've got 131 pages double space. Simple is better. So we talked about that. It supports growth. So think about this. The fair tax is a consumption tax. It's a sales tax, and everybody on the line knows that. You only pay tax on what you spend, not on what you earn. And it repeals the 16th Amendment, Congress's ability to implement an income tax. And what it does is it gets rid of all of the current federal taxes on its citizens that generates revenue in a much more effective and efficient way through a national sales tax rather than through an income tax. And this is key. And we'll talk about this more in our special topic. So, yeah, completely transparent. So what does that mean? Well, there's only one tax. It's a consumption tax, as we said, on new and retail goods and services. So used goods and business-to-business transactions are not subject to the fair tax, and it occurs at 23%. And when we say there's no loopholes, one of the examples that we give is if you go to the mall and you go buy a pair of designer jeans for $100, the fair tax is inclusive, meaning the price tag includes the fair tax. So you get these jeans, they're $100, you get to the cash register to check out, and you pay $100. And when you get your receipt, it says $100 total, $77 goes to the store that you're purchasing the jeans in, and $23 goes to the national sales tax. So it's like completely transparent, right? And we've got this 75,000 pages, all these tax brackets and all these rules that nobody knows what they mean right now. Zero transparency. And the unfortunate thing is Congress likes it. They want it that way. You know, and that's part of our uphill battle here, and that's why the fair tax really is a grassroots effort. And if enough people make enough noise, you know, we can get some more co-sponsors and really make a go at this thing. But Congress likes operating in shroud because, you know, obviously they get to find unique ways that we never know about and that we never see to pay for their district projects. You know, they put forth a piece of legislation and they pull some levers and shift some lines and rewrite a bit of the tax code in order to make it work. You know, we never know about that. So the fair tax is a big shift in power, and it's an important thing to know and to communicate, and it's one of the things we need to fight for. Yeah, it's one of the things that has really slipped away from the citizens of this country over time, gradually, is our ability to hold our elected officials accountable and having transparency in how this government taxes its citizens is a big accountability measure. And if you were in power, you probably wouldn't, then, you know, human nature is you don't want to be held accountable. So we've got an opportunity here, guys, and, you know, we really need to use it. All right, so benefits of the fair tax on trade and business. I love these points. So you're looking at $120 trillion parked in offshore banking centers. That's global wealth. And when the fair tax gets passed and we do away with personal and corporate income taxes, capital gains tax, alternative minimum tax, estate tax, et cetera, man, this money is going to start to flow back into our economy organically. It's estimated that $1 trillion will flow back into the U.S. economy organically. And why is that? Because wealthy American citizens and especially business owners will do with that money what they know will provide the most secure return, and that is they will invest in their existing businesses or new businesses that they start and run. Yeah, so think about that. Think about a boon in new business beginnings and what that will do to our economy. You know, combine that with the U.S. becomes a corporate headquarter haven. You know, major international corporations will relocate their headquarters to the United States because we will have a 0% corporate income tax rate. It's huge. Companies relocate their headquarters. That means we build infrastructure. That means jobs. Between these first two bullet points, jobs, jobs, jobs. New businesses and new infrastructure going up in record levels. New hiring and construction goes through the roof. Huge. Underground economy estimated $2 trillion, pays their fair share. You can't skirt the system. You go to the grocery store, the car dealer, you buy a new home from a home builder, those designer jeans I talked about, everybody pays their fair share. You can't escape it. We broaden the base, that's fairness, and everybody pays their fair share. And you pay, look at that word fair. Yeah, that doesn't mean you pay an equal share. No, you pay taxes based on how much you spend. So if you're frugal, and or if you're in a lower income tax bracket and you're not spending as much money, you don't pay as much taxes as the wealthier or the more well-to-do who are out buying new cars, new homes, new clothes, and going out to eat every night. Yeah, it's progressive that way. The fair tax will increase the average American's take-home pay by 29%. And the reason that is that way is because no longer are there income tax withholdings. Income tax withholdings go away, and instead of experiencing this thing called gross pay and net pay, no, there's just what you get paid because there's no more income tax withholdings. So you're going to have more disposable income than ever before, more jobs and more new businesses beginning than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, we stand at the precipice of an extraordinary economic boom. Really? Yeah, pretty exciting to think about. All right, so super efficient. Currently, 45 states collect a state sales tax. We leverage that infrastructure in the form of a state sales tax bureau. They will collect from the businesses, which means we get 80% more efficient by collecting from 18 to 20 million businesses instead of 120 million households. That is intelligent. No wonder it's so difficult for the IRS to collect. You know, they're trying to collect from 120 million households. I mean, that's just going to be tricky. There's just one form to fill out. What were your gross sales for the month? Multiply that times 23%, Mr. or Mrs. Business, and that's how much you remit to your state sales tax bureau every month, and then they send it on to the Department of the Treasury. So, man, like the transition actually will work pretty seamlessly. You know, there'll be some point of sale work to be done at the cash register, but that's great. That's a software opportunity for many of the brilliant software companies out there. You know, they'll rewrite the software so they're not charging, or so they are charging the fair tax amount. That's it. All right. So the IRS costs $13 billion to operate. So think about that. $13 billion to operate. That's a lot of money. It only collects 3/4 of what it should, and the fair tax would eliminate the IRS over a 3-year period. Written into the legislation. So your privacy is protected, and you pay your taxes when you make purchases, and you don't fill out any detailed income tax forms. And we like to say April 15th becomes just a beautiful warm spring day, nothing to get stressed about. So super fair. We talked about this a little bit. So now there's a level playing field. You know, there's not winners and losers based on how much money you make, and being able to hire the best tax accountants so that you can save, you know, more money than other Americans. We remember Mitt Romney and even Trump. I mean, the whole scuttlebutt when they were running for president was their opponents trying to attack them based on their effective tax rate was less than many middle-class Americans. Yeah, winners versus losers in this. So there's another element that creates important fairness in the fair tax, and that's called the prebate. And that assures no one pays federal tax up to the poverty level. So we're going to show you a chart here, and that'll explain exactly what we mean. Move your eyeballs to the right side of the screen. And let's say you're in a 2-adult household and move down to the green line, and you've got 2 kids. So the Department of Health and Human Services, independent of anyone inside the fair tax or the economists who wrote the fair tax legislation, they developed this matrix, and they have decided based on a lot of data, what is the annual poverty level consumption. And that's what if you're just looking at the right half of the screen, that's what the second column represents. So inside this legislation, what it suggests is that if you spend $32,480, you're spending right at the poverty level for a 4-person family. And so you multiply that times 23%, the fair tax you will have paid on that 32 grand in expenditures, and that equals your annual fair taxes that you would have paid, $7,470. Divide that by 12 months of the year, and every month at the beginning of the month, that's why it's called a prebate instead of a rebate, the Social Security Administration will direct deposit into your bank account $623. And that's for a multimillionaire and somebody who's just struggling to get by. As long as you're a valid citizen. So, yeah, in effect, what we're saying is we're untaxing poverty level spending. So we're untaxing basic necessity spending. And that's really important. That's an important element of fairness. All right. So let's talk about prices. Whoa, national sales tax, 23%. Prices are going up by 23%, right? No. No, because right now, business income taxes are passed off to the consumer, right? Every time we go to the store today and we buy something, we're in effect paying the business's income taxes because they factor that into their pricing matrix. And we call that the embedded tax, which is equivalent to approximately 22% across all industries. And so when the fair tax gets implemented, the embedded tax of 22% goes away because any costs for businesses associated with complying to the federal tax code go away because they don't have corporate income taxes anymore, and they don't have payroll taxes anymore. It's gone. 22% goes away, and the 23% of the fair tax goes in, and it's not a perfect wash. We expect prices to probably increase by 10, maybe 12% or so in the first year, but over time, when businesses really want to grab market share, they drop their prices. And we expect within 3 to 5 years, prices will come down to pre-fair tax levels, and we'll get the prebate. So, and we keep our whole paycheck. So, man, there's just so many wins here. It's pretty amazing. All right, so we've given you an overview of the main fair tax points tonight, and it's a winner. If we go back to the beginning, there's 7 points that put drag on our economy through this tax system, and the fair tax eliminates all of them. So why wouldn't you want it? Well, when your income, and we should say your power, is derived from the current tax code, you feel threatened. And so there's special interests and a small minority that are not interested in having the fair tax passed. 50% of lobbyists are tax lobbyists. They get paid a heavy 6-figure salary to lobby Congress to manipulate the tax code in favor of the wealthy corporations they represent. If corporate income taxes go away, they're out of a job. They're threatened. And of course, we spoke about why politicians like what we have, because they get to operate in shadow. So, when you're voting and somebody's opposing the fair tax, essentially what they're saying is A, they're uneducated about it, or B, they're really operating out of self-interest. And so our request and our ask is, if what we've shared with you tonight aligns for you, like it makes sense to you. You really see it's much better than what we've got, and it's better than any Band-Aid that the broken Washington plan set forth. Put your vote where your mouth is and make the fair tax your number one reason why you vote for somebody. Yeah. All right. So let's pause here. And before we go on to our special topic, which we'll get to in a bit, let's answer some questions. Well, Larry, we've done something right tonight because we don't have any questions, which is unusual. But it means people are with us. You want to speak to Jade's comment?
Yes, and I have to apologize to you, Mark, for I had noticed this previously and failed to mention it to you about the H.R. 25 not repealing the 16th Amendment in and of itself. There is sister legislation needed to do that, and that's in the House also. So, Jade, thank you for waking me up, and you're right about that. The constitutional amendment requires that either the Congress create legislation, and we have legislation that has been put into play by some congressmen to make a tax reform, a reform to the Constitution, or that 28 of the states, two-thirds of the states get together and decide that such an amendment is necessary. In any event, once the legislation is written to literally repeal something or to change something in the Constitution, then it requires three-quarters of the states, 75%, to ratify that change. And for those people who are afraid of a constitutional convention runaway, it is the ratification process that is the last stop. That has to be fully implemented. 75% of the states must agree before anything is passed. And so no matter what kind of recommendations are made, amendment recommendations are made, if one state holds out, or in this case it's 34 from 50, so if 16 states hold out, then it doesn't get passed. So thank you for that, Jade, for your question there and for the wake-up call, as I said. Mark?
Yep, we appreciate being held accountable, that's for sure. Thank you, Larry. So special topic tonight, House Ways and Means Committee Chairperson Kevin Brady did 31 reasons for tax reform and for supporting the current heavily supported House Ways and Means Committee tax plan. And it's lame. You know, they send out an email for 31 days, one reason for 31 days of the month, and reason number 24 that we decided to pluck randomly was only this: a broken tax code enables a broken tax collector. Great. I mean, what a brilliant insight. Excuse my sarcasm. Yeah, so what we decided to do was let's put it to the FairTax Test. So we came up with 3 simple bullet points that show how the fair tax absolutely flushes Kevin Brady's plan in this way. So Kevin Brady says we will eliminate special interest loopholes. Okay, you could try, but if you still have an income tax and therefore you've got lobbyists, you will always have loopholes. Yeah, so the fair tax creates a paradigm shift in tax structure in such that we remove the income tax. And as a result, 50% of lobbyists And without those lobbyists in place, there's zero opportunity for special interest loopholes. There's just no exemptions. No industry is exempt from the fair tax. You buy a new good or service, you pay the fair tax. Period. End of story. It's just like super clean. Yeah. Crushes what Brady sets forth. Postcard filing for 120 million households. Well, we're going to do that 80% more efficiently. We talked about that. And thirdly, we're going to rein in the IRS. Oh, okay. Well, what does that mean? Tried that before. It just keeps getting bigger. We're going to get rid of it. So, yeah, that's it. Pretty darn simple. Yeah, Larry, what might you add to it?
Well, you've covered the bases on this particular element, but if any of the participants tonight have not been getting the messages, email messages from Kevin Brady's Ways and Means Committee, they missed getting Kevin Brady's 31 reasons for reforming the tax code. And they're not reforming it really. They're just changing the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. They're making some adjustments that will not stay as they made them. Within 90 days, there'll be changes made to those changes already, those reforms already. So you've got it covered here, and we just have to look and see if we missed something. Do you have any more poll questions, Ron? Mark?
Yeah, I do. But before I do that, we want to talk to you about how you can be in action. So these are 4 great ways. So first of all, let your voice be heard. Email President Trump, click on reflections, look, if enough of these things come in, go to the 3rd bullet point, write, email, phone, and visit your congressperson. And then what we should have up here is also Kevin Brady and all the other members of the House Ways and Means Committee. It's so easy to do. And look, at the end of the day, if there's enough volume and there's enough noise, then guess what they do? That stimulates their attention. It's like, oh, my constituency base, the people who vote me in and who are ultimately my boss and responsible for my job, man, they really want this thing. And enough of them say they want it. So, that's how we got to drive it. Popbox is a great website where it lists all of the current legislation in Congress, and you can go to search for HR 25 and 18 and click support and leave a comment. And then lastly, at the bottom, make a contribution, join the 1040 Club. And the 1040 Club means that you donate $10.40 every month. That's one way to say I'm committed and I support this thing. And we need it. I mean, if we had 10,000 more people who supported the fair tax through the 1040 Club and we generated over 100 grand a month, the pressure that we could put on Congress would be exponential. Make a huge difference. So more on that in a bit. But Larry, let's see if we have any questions.
Okay, well, Ron Malero corrected me on the number of states required to ratify a constitutional change. I said it was 34, and it's actually 38, 75% of 50. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, and additionally, Ron shared that the fair tax greatly reduces tax evasion, now currently at almost $700 billion. It's amazing to think about.
Yeah, the income tax system itself, regardless of whether it's a flat tax or a tiered tax, multi-tiered, cannot tax those who evade the income tax system today, because most of those people just don't even file. They're not even on record with the IRS. And then there are the others in the nation who either claim deductions in excess of what they really have to lower their tax burden a little bit, or they claim income lower than what they really had, or they don't claim income that they did get in order to have a lower tax bracket. And those you can't help with very much either. There's not enough IRS agents to be able to cover all of those bases. The fair tax, of course, eliminates both of those problems entirely, as well as stopping companies from moving overseas. Because if there's no corporate tax and no income taxes whatsoever, no business-to-business tax, the only business paying any tax are those that sell retail to the end consumer, and they collect the tax from the consumer and remit it to the state. So it's so simple. But we've eliminated all of that corruption within the income tax system, Mark.
Yep, love it. So we want to launch a poll here and ask you, have you communicated with your federal elected officials, the president and the Ways and Means Committee chair and other chairpersons about the fair tax? So go ahead and vote. And we'll give you 10 more seconds. I'm going to close it out here shortly, so get your vote in.
Yeah, if you need more than 10 seconds to decide yes or no, then there's something is running a little bit slow. I mean, you're not working with a with an i3 or an i5 processor. You're still using an old Pentium.
Okay. So we got 2/3 say they have and 1/3 say they haven't. Thank you for your honesty. For those that haven't, we've got some calls to action up here that offer an opportunity where you can do that. And for those that have, we want you to do it again. That's what it requires. So look, you've heard some things tonight. You don't seem to have a lot of questions, which is just fine. And we want to invite you to be in action here, guys. And join this 1040 club. It's $10.40. It's a couple of Starbucks a month. And it starts with you. Like, just go on automatic pilot. I promise you won't miss the money. So, the question is real simple. Does this tax reform legislation align for you? If it does, go to fairtax.org. Click on donate at the end and join the 1040 club. Put in your credit card. Cancel anytime, but that's it. Like, that's what commitment would look like. If you like this, don't wait for somebody else to do something about it. You do something about it. That's our ask. So given our ask, like, we're going to be real direct here. We have another poll for you. We would like to know that, can we count on you? Oh, Larry, I did it again, Larry.
What's that?
I bonked a button that doesn't, I closed out the poll before I even launched it.
Oh.
Let's see if I can do it again.
I double click. Now, another good question would be, when was the last time any of these participants have communicated with their local congressperson, their elected congressman, congresswoman, or their U.S. senators? Now, I'm not saying everybody is going to be able to do that. I have a situation here where we have a new freshman senator, and she won't, not only will she not talk to me, nor will she grant me an appointment to visit with her, but she won't even send me, let me get on her email list so I can find out where she's going to be when she's in town. And that's very discouraging on my behalf, I tell you, because I had a great relationship with the former congressman who was a co-sponsor of the FairTax, and we worked very well together. All right, Mark, you got it.
Yeah, got it. So, yeah, I'd really like people to weigh in on this, and there's anonymity here, so, weigh in. We've got only half of you that have voted, so either you're not paying attention or you don't care or you're scared. So yeah, vote. What? It's all right, yes or no. It's okay if it's a no. All right, I'm going to close it out. If you haven't voted, please put in your vote. Some of you are abstaining from voting. I'm unclear why. Maybe that should be a poll question, Larry. Okay, so yeah, that's beautiful. 80% of you who voted said you would do it. That's great. We appreciate that. We will look for your contribution as of tonight. So thank you for that. And for those of you who voted no, we honor you in that decision. And if you're willing, I'd love for you to write in either a question or put up your hand if you're willing, and we'd love to just talk to you. What aren't we seeing here that we need to see? Or what aren't we doing here that would have you be reticent about it? And that information would be very useful to us. So if anybody's willing to write in about that.
Is there something about the FairTax that either you don't understand or that you don't like and you don't think it would be a worthy tax reform plan to go to? We'd like to hear about that, and we'd like to discuss that with whomever you might be. But don't be bashful. We're all friends here, and we appreciate any comments that any of you may have, one way or the other. So for that 20%, if you've got some hang up for whatever the reason about the FairTax, type it in, or if you have the ability.
We're already 1040 Club members, and we appreciate that. So thank you. Well, we are where we are, Larry. What would you like to say to close this out?
Frank had one comment here, which was an observation, really, which just goes to the level of excellence or experienced FairTax supporter that Frank is. And I would like to just read this. Those in power and with the ability to reform the tax code only talk about tax cuts. Tax cuts are only a small part of the problem. Corruption in the IRS, greed and power issues with our representatives, abuse of the system by lobbyists, etc. That is very, very true. It's what we're fighting more than anything, I think. And the message that I would like to leave with you, and I think Mark would agree, is that the only way we can get rid of that is to get rid of an income tax system. There is no way that an income tax system will perform for this nation economically like a national consumption tax, which is exactly what HR 25, the FairTax, is. So we just have to get a lot more people to know or understand it. And if you don't understand it yet, we'd like to help you do so. Don't be closed-minded about this. It's too important a thing because it's going to affect the lives not only of ourselves, our remaining lives, and yourself, but your children and grandchildren and so on. So this is very, very important. I wish you all the best of evenings, and Mark, back to you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We appreciate the supporters who came back to be with us and your contributions that you made, and we'll keep fighting the good fight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and you will get a follow-up email thanking you for joining us in print, and if you have questions, we're here to answer them. Just reply to that email, and we'll get you looked after. All right, everybody, get on those calls to action. Get over to fairtax.org. Join 1040. Have a great evening.